please help me to reach 7,000 subscribers?" Rain tapped gently against the cafeteria windows, blurring the laughter of the world outside. Inside, Ethan Cole sat alone, his lunch untouched, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted the thick glasses slipping down his nose. The table next to him was alive with noise. Football jackets, loud jokes, the kind of arrogance that only comes from never being afraid. The leader of the pack, Ryan Parker, leaned back in his chair and smirked. "Hey, Einstein," he called out, voice dripping with mockery. "How's life in your fantasy land today?" Ethan didn't look up. He had learned that silence was safer, but the quiet only fueled them more. Ryan walked over, grabbed Ethan's notebook, and flipped through the pages filled with sketches of machines, circuits, and blueprints. "Look at this, our little nerds building robots to replace real men." The table erupted in laughter. When Ethan reached to take it back, Ryan shoved him hard. The notebook hit the floor, pages scattering like wounded birds. For a second, Ethan's eyes burned with something fierce, something raw, but then he blinked it away. He just knelt down, gathered the pages, and whispered, "Please, just leave me alone." Ryan's smirk widened. "Or what? You gonna invent a time machine and make me disappear?" He tossed a carton of milk, splattering Ethan's shirt. The laughter returned, louder this time, crueler. At the far end of the cafeteria, unseen by anyone, a man watched. He leaned casually against a pillar, dressed in a worn leather jacket and a look that could cut glass. His name was Cole Harper. His eyes didn't move from Ethan, not for a second. That evening, the sun sank behind the quiet suburban neighborhood where Ethan lived with his mother, Claire. The house was modest, the kind built for comfort, not pride. On the mantel, a folded flag rested beside a photo of a young soldier in uniform, Ethan's older brother, Jack. Claire was at the stove when Ethan walked in, still wearing the stained shirt. She turned, saw the bruise under his eye, and her heart cracked a little more. "Ethan, honey, what happened?" "Just practice," he lied softly, setting his backpack down. "Someone threw a ball too hard." Claire didn't press. She never did. The world had already taken too much from them. Her husband years ago, her eldest son in a war she couldn't even pronounce properly. She just placed a gentle hand on Ethan's cheek and smiled faintly. "You're so much like him, you know. You even have Jack's quiet eyes." Upstairs, Ethan sat by the window, watching raindrops race each other down the glass. He opened his notebook and stared at the broken sketches, the bent corners, the smudged ink. He didn't cry. He never cried. He just whispered to the photo on his desk, "You'd know what to do, Jack, you always did." Outside, a car slowed in front of the house. The same man from the cafeteria stepped out, lighting a cigarette, his eyes sharp as steel. He looked at the house, at the photo visible through the window, and something like a ghost of a smile crossed his lips. He took a slow drag and murmured, "You kept your promise, Jack. Now it's my turn." Later that night, Ethan heard footsteps outside his window. He peeked through the curtain and saw a shadowed figure standing under the streetlight, hands in pockets, looking up toward his room. For a moment, fear shot through him, but the man just nodded once, almost like a salute, before walking away into the mist. The next day at school, things didn't change. Ryan was waiting by the lockers, the same sneer, the same pack of wolves behind him. "Morning sunshine," he mocked, slamming Ethan's lockers shut. The crowd snickered. "You look tired. Long night coding love letters to your calculator." Ethan clenched his fists but said nothing. His silence made them bold. Ryan grabbed him by the collar, pulling him close. "You better learn, nerd. Some people are born to get hit." The punch came fast, sharp, and cruel. Ethan fell hard, his glasses cracking against the floor. He blinked through the blur, saw his own blood dripping, and heard their laughter echoing like a bad song. But outside the school gate, parked beneath a dying oak tree, Cole Harper watched through the windshield. He saw the shove, the hit, the blood. His jaw tightened. He exhaled slowly, then muttered to himself, "All right, kid, now I see." That night, as the lights in the Peterson neighborhood dimmed, Cole was still there, leaning on his car, cigarette glowing like a tiny ember in the dark. He wasn't smiling anymore. He just whispered to the night, "Nobody hurts him again. Not while I'm here." And in that silent promise, something dangerous awakened, not a protector, but a storm waiting to break. ChatGPT said. The next morning began like any other. The sun bleeding softly through thin curtains, the hum of a coffee maker, the fragile rhythm of survival. Claire stood at the counter, still in her robe, stirring sugar into her cup when she heard it. 3 slow knocks at the front door. They weren't the kind of knocks that asked permission. They carried weight. She hesitated. No one came by unannounced, not since her husband's funeral. When she opened the door, a tall man stood there, sunlight framing him in gold dust. His leather jacket looked older than the house itself, his eyes sharp yet familiar in a way that made her heart stumble. "Can I help you?" she asked cautiously. He removed his sunglasses, revealing a gaze that seemed to remember too much. "You must be Claire. I'm a friend of Jack's." Her breath caught. The name alone was enough to tilt her world for a second. "Jack, my Jack?" He nodded once. "We served together, overseas." Claire stepped aside instinctively. "Please, come in." Inside, the air felt heavy with ghosts. Cole looked around the living room, the family photos, the folded flag, the shelf of old medals. His hand brushed one frame, the one of Jack smiling in uniform. He whispered, "You never changed, buddy." Claire watched him quietly, her voice soft but trembling. "You knew him well?" "Better than most," Cole replied, setting the frame down gently. "He saved my life more than once. I owed him. More than I could ever repay." She smiled sadly. "That sounds like him." Before she could say more, footsteps creaked on the stairs. Ethan appeared, hair messy, backpack slung over one shoulder. When he saw Cole, he froze mid-step. The stranger's presence filled the small room like a thundercloud. "Ethan," Claire said, her tone lighter now. "This is Mr. Harper. He knew your brother." Cole turned toward the boy. For a moment, neither spoke. There was a flicker of recognition in Ethan's eyes, as if his memory was trying to connect last night's shadow under the streetlight. "You were outside," Ethan said quietly. Claire blinked. "Outside?" Cole didn't flinch. "Yeah, I was making sure I had the right house. Didn't mean to spook you, kid." Ethan nodded slowly, but something in his gut told him there was more. As they sat down, Cole spoke about Jack. Not like a hero carved in stone, but like a real man. He told stories that made Claire laugh through her tears. Jack sneaking stray dogs into camp, fixing radios out of scrap metal, dreaming of home. For the first time in months, the house sounded alive. But in between the laughter, Cole's eyes kept drifting to Ethan. Every bruise, every flinch, every shadow under the boy's quiet stare, he noticed all of it. When Claire went to refill their coffee, Cole leaned forward slightly. "They're giving you a hard time at school, huh?" Ethan stiffened. "I'm fine." "Sure you are," Cole said, voice steady but kind. "You're Jack's brother. You don't break easy, but even the strongest need someone watching their back." Ethan looked away, pretending to be busy with his notebook. "You don't even know me." Cole's eyes softened. "Maybe not, but I knew the man who made you who you are, and that's enough." There was silence, the kind that says everything words can't. When Claire returned, Cole stood. "I should go. I just wanted to pay my respects." She followed him to the door, reluctant to let him leave. "You're welcome here any time, Mr. Harper." He smiled faintly. "Call me Cole." As he stepped outside, Ethan watched through the window. Cole paused beside his car, looked up at the boy's window again, and raised a hand was a silent promise. That night, when Ethan sat down to work on his sketches, he found something slipped under his notebook, a folded piece of paper with rough handwriting. It read, "Jack once saved my life. Now it's my turn to save his brother's." Ethan stared at the note for a long time, heart pounding. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear and loneliness, a spark flickered. The feeling that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone anymore. Outside, Cole sat in his car under the moonlight, engine off, watching the house. He pulled out a small photo of Jack, both of them younger, smiling in uniform, and whispered, "Don't worry, brother. I'll make sure he never goes through what we did." Then he started the car, the taillights fading into the misty night. But what neither of them knew was that Ryan Parker and his crew were planning something far worse than bruises. The week that followed felt heavier than usual. The air at school hung thick with tension, the kind that warned of something cruel waiting to happen. Ethan moved through the hallways quietly, shoulders hunched, his cracked glasses taped at the bridge. He'd learned to count steps between insults, breaths between shoves. Each day was survival measured in silence. Ryan Parker wasn't done. For him, it had become a game, one where pain was proof of power. And Ethan, with his calm eyes and trembling hands, made the perfect target. That Friday afternoon, as students spilled into the parking lot, Ryan waited by his car with his friends. The autumn wind kicked up dust, carrying their laughter across the asphalt. Ethan tried to slip past unnoticed, but Ryan's voice cut through the air. "Hey, genius! You dropped something?" Ethan froze. Ryan held up Ethan's sketchbook, the one he'd spent nights rebuilding. His heart sank. "Give it back, Ryan." "Oh, this?" "Sure thing." Ryan smirked, flipping through the pages before tearing one out. "Oops." He tossed the page into a nearby puddle where ink began to bleed into black water. Ethan lunged forward, desperate, but Ryan's fist came fast and hard. The punch sent Ethan sprawling to the ground. His glasses snapped, blood running from his lip. Ryan stepped closer, his shadow swallowing the light. "You think you're better than me, huh? With your little robot drawings and your dead hero brother?" The words hit harder than the punches. Ethan's chest tightened, his throat burning with something between rage and grief. "Say his name again," he whispered, eyes glistening. Ryan laughed. "Jack, oh, you mean..." Before he could finish, Ethan swung. It wasn't much of a hit and a desperate, shaking punch, but it landed. The laughter stopped. For the first time, Ryan's smug grin faltered. Then came the storm. Ryan shoved him into the side of a parked car, the metal echoing through the lot. Another punch to the ribs, a kick to the stomach. Ethan gasped for air, his vision blurring. Someone shouted for them to stop, but the crowd only watched, recording, whispering, entertained. When it was over, Ethan lay there, broken glasses beside him, his notebook crushed into the mud. Ryan spit on the ground and walked away, laughing with his friends. Ethan didn't move. He stared up at the gray sky, rain beginning to fall, mixing with the blood on his face. Somewhere inside, something cracked, something that didn't heal. That night, the police called Claire. She found Ethan in the hospital, his arm in a cast, ribs bruised, silence heavy in his eyes. When the doctor left, she sat beside him, holding his hand. "Ethan," she whispered, tears falling freely. "You have to tell me who did this." He turned his face toward the window. "It doesn't matter." "Of course it matters," she said, voice trembling. "You could have..." He looked at her then, really looked. "Mom, they'll just do it again." Claire broke. She leaned over, hugging him tightly, her tears wetting his hospital gown. "I can't lose another son." From the hallway, Cole stood watching through the small glass window in the door. His jaw clenched, his hands curling into fists. He'd seen soldiers beaten before, but not like this. Not a kid. Not Jack's brother. Later that night, after Claire fell asleep beside Ethan's bed, Cole stepped into the room. He sat down quietly, his eyes fixed on the boy's bruised face. "You fought back," he said softly. "That's good." Ethan opened his eyes slowly. "Didn't help." "It's not supposed to," Cole replied. "It's supposed to remind you you're still alive." Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. "You said you'd save me." "I will," Cole said, standing. "But first I need to know their names." Ethan hesitated, then met his eyes. "Ryan Parker." Cole nodded once. "All right." He left the hospital without another word. The rain outside was relentless, soaking his jacket, but he didn't care. He lit a cigarette, the flame trembling in the wind, and muttered, "You shouldn't have touched him, kid. You really shouldn't have." By the next morning, the school parking lot was quiet, except for Ryan Parker's car. Its tires were slashed, windshield shattered, and a single note taped to the steering wheel. "Pick on someone who hits back." The rumors spread fast. No one knew who did it, but whispers followed Cole wherever he went. Ethan saw the news at school. The look on Ryan's face when he found his car, red with anger, humiliated. For the first time, Ethan felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not guilt. Power. But as he looked out the window later that day and saw Cole's car parked across the street again, a chill ran down his spine. He knew what revenge looked like, and he wasn't sure it would stop at broken glass. ChatGPT said, "The days after the attack moved in strange slow motion, the kind where hours blend together and nights feel longer than they should." Ethan stayed home from school, his arms stiff in the cast, ribs wrapped tight beneath his shirt. The bruises had begun to fade, but the silence inside him hadn't. He barely spoke, barely ate, spending most of his time staring at the photo of his brother in uniform on his desk. Claire tried to keep the house warm with small things. Soup on the stove, soft music from the old radio, gentle words that always trailed off before they reached the wound. but no amount of love could hide the fear in her eyes every time the phone rang, or the ache in her voice when she whispered, "It's just us now, Ethan. It has to be enough." It was almost midnight when the knock came. 3 sharp taps in the same rhythm as before. Claire hesitated, clutching her robe tighter. When she opened the door, the porch light caught the outline of Cole Harper, soaked from rain, eyes shadowed, wearing an old army jacket that seemed to carry the smell of smoke and war. "Cole?" she said softly. "It's late," he nodded. "I know, but I needed to see him." She stepped aside, letting him in. His boots left wet prints across the floor, the rainwater pooling beneath him like a memory he couldn't wash off. Ethan was sitting on the couch, half asleep, when he looked up. For a second, in the dim light, the uniform caught his eye, and for a heartbeat he thought he was looking at his brother. "Jack?" he whispered before he could stop himself. Cole froze. The name hit him like shrapnel. For a moment he didn't speak, just stared, jaw tight, as if holding back something deep and dangerous. Then quietly he said, "No, kid. Not Jack, but I was there when he..." He stopped, his voice cracking. "He didn't die easy. He went down fighting." Ethan's eyes burned, his voice trembling. "Did he say anything before?" Cole sat down across from him. "Yeah," he said softly. "He said, 'Make sure my kid brother never feels alone.'" The room fell silent. Claire covered her mouth, her tears slipping free. Ethan looked down at his cast, tracing the faint initials someone had scribbled on it earlier that day. JC he hadn't noticed before. Cole leaned forward. "Jack was the bravest man I ever met. But he wasn't just brave because he fought. He was brave because he believed people could be better, even when the world kept proving him wrong." Ethan's eyes met his. "And you?" Cole smiled faintly, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "I stopped believing that a long time ago." The thunder rolled outside. Cole stood and walked toward the mantel, stopping by Jack's folded flag. He picked it up carefully, running his thumb along the edge of the frame. "He used to talk about you all the time. Said you were the smart one. Said if anything happened to him, you'd build something that mattered." Ethan swallowed hard. "I was supposed to build something for him, a drone, to help soldiers, but I never finished it." Cole turned, his expression unreadable. "Maybe it's time you did." Claire stepped closer, her voice shaking. "Cole, what are you really doing here?" He hesitated, then sighed. "Jack and I made a promise. If one of us didn't make it home, the other would look after his family. But it's more than that now." He looked at Ethan. "You're not just a promise anymore. You're my mission." For a moment, no one spoke. The rain softened outside, a slow rhythm against the windows. Claire wiped her tears, whispering, "You look just like them when you stand there. Both soldiers, both ghosts." Cole gave a half smile. "That's all we ever become, ma'am. Ghosts who can't stop fighting." He turned to leave, but Ethan stood quickly. "Wait, did you really mean it about saving me?" Cole looked back. "I meant every word." "Then don't just save me," Ethan said quietly. "Teach me." The request hit Cole harder than any battlefield memory. He saw Jack in the boy's eyes, the same fire, the same need to stand tall against the impossible. "All right," Cole said, voice steady. "But understand something. Once you start down that road, you don't get to be the same person again." Ethan nodded slowly. "Maybe that's the point." Cole studied him for a long moment, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a small weathered dog tag. He placed it in Ethan's hand. "Your brother's. He wanted you to have it." Ethan's fingers closed around the metal, the warmth from Cole's hand lingering. For the first time in weeks, his eyes didn't look lost, they looked alive. As Cole stepped back into the rain, his silhouette fading beneath the storm, Ethan whispered to the empty doorway, "Good night, soldier." And somewhere far away in the quiet echo of thunder, it almost sounded like a voice whispered back, "Proud of you, little brother." Nights grew colder after that. The kind of cold that doesn't come from the weather but from everything unsaid, the quiet before something dangerous finally takes shape. Ethan's world began to split in two. The daylight life where he pretended to be a student again, and the nights where Cole Harper taught him what it meant to stop being afraid. It started small. Cole would meet him after dark, behind the abandoned garage on the edge of town. He showed Ethan how to stand, how to breathe through pain, how to fight back without losing control. The lessons were raw and unpolished, built on instinct and survival, the kind soldiers learn when rules no longer matter. Strength isn't about hurting people, Cole would say, striking the air in a sharp motion. It's about knowing when to stop. Ethan's knuckles were always bruised, but he didn't complain. For the first time in his life, he felt something shifting inside. Confidence, power, the quiet kind of anger that demanded to be used for something good. Cole saw it too. Some nights he'd watch the boy move through the shadows, each punch sharper, each breath steadier. "You've got it in you," he'd whisper. Your brother would have been proud. But pride was a dangerous thing. At school, word had spread fast about Ryan's car. No one could prove who had done it, but everyone had their guesses. Ryan still swaggered through the halls, still wore his cruelty like armor, but there was a flicker of fear now. The kind that shows when a bully realizes the world might hit back. And Ethan saw it. He felt it. That power Cole warned him about, it started to taste sweet. One afternoon, when Ryan shoved another freshman into a locker, Ethan didn't look away. He stepped forward, calm and cold. "Leave him alone." Ryan turned, the sneer automatic. "What are you gonna do, genius? Draw me to death?" Ethan didn't flinch. "Try me." The hallway went quiet. Ryan laughed, a sharp, nervous sound. But when he swung, Ethan moved faster, blocking, countering, shoving him back hard against the lockers. The noise was loud, metallic. Ryan's friends pulled him away, shouting. But the message had already landed. For the first time, no one laughed at Ethan Cole. That night, Cole found him sitting on the curb outside his house, a bruise blooming along his cheek. But his eyes were alive, burning. "You fought back," Cole said. Ethan nodded. "And I won." Cole sat beside him, lighting a cigarette. "Yeah, but that's not what I meant to teach you." Ethan frowned. "Then what did you mean?" Cole exhaled smoke into the night. "Winning isn't always the same as doing what's right." The silence that followed was heavy. Ethan didn't want to hear it. He'd spent his life being told to stay quiet, to take it, to be better than the world around him. Now for once he had the power to change something. "Ryan's not done," Ethan said finally. "He'll come back," Cole nodded. "He will. Bullies always do." He turned to Ethan, eyes hard now. "That's why you don't become one first." But deep down, Cole was fighting his own battle. Every bruise on Ethan's skin felt like an echo from his past. From Jack, from the brothers he'd lost, from the war that never really ended. He'd promised to protect this boy, to save him. Yet every night he saw Ethan hit harder, faster, colder. He wondered if he was creating something he couldn't control, a savior or a monster. The line between them blurred more each day. That line shattered completely one night, when Cole came by and found Ethan in the garage, not training but building. On the workbench, wires and metal parts gleamed under the lamp. It wasn't a toy anymore. It was a machine, a drone. But attached to its frame was something darker. Stun modules, motion sensors, deterrent functions. Cole froze. "What is this?" Ethan didn't look up. "You said Jack believed I'd build something that mattered." "Not this way," Cole said sharply, stepping closer. "You think your brother wanted you turning into me?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "You're the one who said no one's coming to save me." "I'm just making sure I can save myself. By fighting fire with fire?" Cole snapped. "That's not saving yourself, Ethan. That's burning the whole damn house down." Ethan slammed his tools down, his voice shaking. "You don't get it!" "You talk about Jack like he was a hero. But where were the heroes when he died? Where were they when those kids broke my ribs? When my mom cried herself to sleep? I'm done waiting for heroes." Cole stared at him, pain flickering behind the anger. "So you'll become what hurt you?" Ethan looked up then, eyes cold, defiant. "No, I'll become what stops them." Cole didn't answer. He just stepped back, his shadow long against the dim light. "Careful, kid." That's exactly what every monster once said. As he left, Ethan turned back to the machine, soldering another wire into place. The metal sparked briefly, a small flash in the dark, like something being born. Outside, Cole stood by his car, hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. The reflection in the glass showed the man he used to be, the soldier, the killer, the ghost. "Jack," he whispered, voice breaking. "I don't know if I'm saving him, or turning him into me." And somewhere inside that quiet little house, as rain began to fall again, Ethan kept working, unaware that the next time he'd use what he was building, Someone wouldn't walk away. The night it all came undone began like any other, too quiet to notice what was coming. The annual school fundraiser had filled the gym with noise and light, banners hanging from the ceiling, the smell of popcorn and perfume mixing in the air. Parents laughed at the raffle table. Students posed for pictures, and for one evening everything looked normal. But Ethan Cole knew better. He stood near the back wall, his cast finally gone, his sleeves rolled up, eyes scanning the crowd. Somewhere in that sea of familiar faces was Ryan Parker, pretending to be another harmless teenager. The bruises from weeks ago had faded, but the memory hadn't. It never did. Ethan's heart thudded against his ribs as he spotted him near the stage, laughing with his friends, that same cruel grin plastered across his face. He wasn't sorry. He'd never be sorry. Up in the bleachers, Cole Harper leaned against a railing watching. He'd promised Claire he'd stay away from the school that night, but something in his gut told him he shouldn't. He knew that look in Ethan's eyes, the quiet before a storm. He'd seen it in soldiers right before they pulled a trigger they could never take back. Ethan reached into his bag, fingers brushing against the small remote tucked inside. It wasn't much, just a prototype. His drone, rebuilt and modified, was parked quietly in the maintenance closet down the hall, humming faintly to life as the signal reached it. He told himself it wasn't revenge. It was justice, just a warning, just to scare them. But deep down, he knew he was lying. Ryan's voice cut through the music. "Hey, Cole! You still breathing through those nerd glasses?" A few laughs followed. Ethan froze. Every muscle in his body screamed to walk away, but the anger had been waiting too long for its moment. He looked up at Ryan, and the entire gym seemed to fade into silence. That's when the lights flickered, once, twice. Then the faint whir of propellers filled the air. Heads turned. The drone appeared from the shadows, hovering above the basketball court, its red sensors blinking like eyes in the dark. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Teachers shouted, students screamed, but Ethan stood still, his thumb on the control. "Ethan!" a voice barked. Cole's voice. From the bleachers, Cole was already moving, shoving through panicked students. "Turn it off, kid." "Right now!" But Ethan couldn't hear him over the roar in his ears, the sound of months of humiliation, pain, fear. He pressed the button. The drone's stun module sparked, arcing a burst of light across the floor. It hit the bleachers, setting off a small fire near the banners. Screams erupted. Water bottles spilled, tables crashed, people ran. Ryan stumbled backward, his eyes wide now, terrified, not of Ethan, but of what he'd unleashed. Cole reached Ethan in 3 long strides, grabbing his wrist and yanking the remote from his hand. "What the hell have you done? It wasn't supposed to—" Ethan's words broke off in panic as the flames spread up the wall. Cole smashed the remote on the floor, sprinted toward the fire, and yanked down a nearby extinguisher. Smoke thickened fast, swallowing the music and lights. Alarms wailed. Somewhere, someone was crying. He doused the flames until the hiss of the extinguisher replaced the screaming. But when he turned back, Ethan was gone. Outside, rain poured down again, harsh, unrelenting. Ethan stumbled into the parking lot, coughing, his hands shaking. Behind him, the gym windows glowed orange for a moment before the sprinklers inside put out the rest. Sirens wailed in the distance. Cole burst out the side door, spotting him by the flagpole. "Ethan!" Ethan turned, drenched, his eyes wild with fear and regret. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." Cole grabbed his shoulders. "You could have burned them alive." Ethan's voice cracked. "I wanted them to feel what I felt." For a long moment they stood there, teacher and student, soldier and boy, savior and monster, both shaking for different reasons. Cole's voice dropped to a whisper. "You think this pain leaves you when you pass it on? It doesn't, it just finds a new home." Ethan's lip trembled. "Then what am I supposed to do with it?" Cole looked at him, rain running down his face like tears. "You learn to carry it without letting it burn you." Behind them, the fire trucks arrived. Teachers huddled students together, calling names, counting heads. The night was chaos, a blur of flashing lights and shouted orders. When they reached home, Claire was waiting at the door, her face pale and frightened. She didn't ask questions. She just pulled Ethan into her arms and held on as if the world might take him next. Cole watched from the doorway, soaked and silent, the guilt sitting heavy on his chest. He'd promised Jack he'd save the boy. But standing there, he realized saving someone didn't always mean keeping them innocent. Sometimes it just meant keeping them alive long enough to find redemption. As dawn crept over the neighborhood, Cole stood by his car, watching the sunrise through the fog. He took out Jack's dog tag from his pocket, turning it over in his hand. "You were right, brother," he murmured. "He's got your fire. But maybe I gave him too much of mine." And inside the house, Ethan sat by his window, staring at the charred edges of the remote on his desk. The drone was gone. The fire was out. But something inside him still smoldered, a mix of guilt, anger, and the faint, aching hope that maybe, somehow, this was the night everything finally began to change. Morning came quietly, too quiet for a town that had nearly burned itself the night before. The rain had stopped, leaving behind the smell of smoke and wet asphalt. The school stood in silence, its gym sealed off with yellow tape, black streaks marking where the fire had licked the walls. Ethan Cole sat on the curb outside, a bruise blooming on his wrist where the firefighter had grabbed him during the chaos. His hands trembled around a styrofoam cup of coffee he couldn't drink. He hadn't been arrested yet. The principal had called it a pending investigation. His mother hadn't spoken a single word on the drive there. Her face pale, her eyes red from crying. He'd ruined everything. Cole Harper walked up the sidewalk, his uniform jacket still damp, a folder tucked under his arm. He looked exhausted but calm. The kind of calm that comes after seeing too much. He stopped in front of Ethan, studied him for a moment, and then sat down beside him. For a while, neither spoke. Only the wind filled the space between them, rattling the caution tape. Finally, Cole said, "You know, when I was your age, I thought anger was strength." Ethan looked up, eyes heavy. "You were a soldier. You had a reason?" Cole let out a dry laugh. "That's the thing. So did everyone else." He glanced toward the burned gym. "Every man I ever fought thought he was right. Every bullet had a reason behind it." Ethan's voice cracked. "I just wanted them to stop. Just once, I know," Cole said softly. "But last night, you became what you hated." The words hit harder than any punishment could. Ethan stared down at the ground, his throat tightening. "So that's it? I'm just like them?" Cole shook his head. "No, you're a kid who made a choice. A bad one. But you can still decide what kind of man you'll be after it." He reached into the folder and pulled out a photo, a black and white picture of a young soldier smiling beside his platoon. "You remember me telling you about my brother, Jack?" Ethan nodded. "That's him," Cole said. "He was the kindest man I ever knew. He believed every person deserved saving, even the ones who didn't think they could be." Ethan studied the photo. The man's grin was wide, unguarded, the kind of smile that didn't know the world could break you. "What happened to him?" Cole's eyes dimmed. "He saved me. Took the hit meant for me in Kandahar. I came home with a medal. He came home in a box." Silence. Cole looked at Ethan. "I've spent years trying to make that mean something. But last night watching how close you came to losing yourself, I realized something. Saving someone isn't about pulling them out of the fire. It's about teaching them not to start one." Ethan swallowed hard. "Then teach me." Cole studied him for a long moment, then gave a small nod. All right, weeks passed. The gym was repaired. The story faded from headlines, and students went back to pretending nothing had happened. Ethan wasn't expelled, but he was suspended long enough to feel the weight of it. When he returned, whispers followed him down every hallway. Some kids sneered. Others avoided him completely, but he didn't lash out. Not this time. Instead, after classes, he began spending hours in the workshop, fixing what he'd broken. With Cole's help, he rebuilt the drone, but this time it wasn't a weapon. It was part of a science fair project, one designed to detect fire hazards and prevent accidents. When he unveiled it, the same teachers who had once looked at him with suspicion now applauded. Even Ryan, standing in the crowd, nodded once before turning away. Progress, not forgiveness. But it was enough. After the fair, Cole found Ethan sitting on the steps outside, the golden light of sunset painting the world soft and quiet. Cole smirked. "You did good today," Ethan shrugged. "It's not going to change what I did." "No," Cole said. "But it changes what you'll do next." "That's what matters," Ethan hesitated. "Do you think people can really forgive?" Cole looked toward the horizon. "Sometimes. But you can't live waiting for it. You build something better, and one day, you look around and realize you forgave yourself first." They sat in silence for a while. Watching the last of the sun slip behind the trees, Ethan finally asked, "Do you miss him?" "Your brother?" Cole smiled faintly. "Every day. But teaching you? I think it's the first time I've stopped blaming myself for surviving." Ethan's throat tightened. Then maybe this was his last lesson too. Cole turned to him, eyes glinting. Maybe it was. As they stood to leave, Ethan glanced back at the gym, the place where everything had fallen apart, and somehow, where everything had started again. He adjusted his backpack, the evening wind tugging at his hair. "Mr. Harper? Yeah? Thanks for not giving up on me." Cole smiled, that tired soldier's smile that hid more stories than words ever could. "Don't make me regret it, kid." Ethan laughed softly. "No promises." They walked off together down the cracked sidewalk, two broken souls stitched together by one truth. Sometimes, the hardest lessons aren't written in books, they're written in the scars you survive. And as the last bell echoed faintly in the distance, Cole looked up at the darkening sky and whispered, just loud enough for the wind to hear, "Rest easy, Jack, the lesson's been learned." The day of the farewell came wrapped in silence. No grand speeches, no banners, no crowd, just the kind of stillness that feels like the world itself is holding its breath. The school gym, once filled with chaos and fire, now stood repaired and gleaming. The walls had been repainted, the floors polished, and the faint scent of varnish mixed with the echoes of what had happened there. Ethan Cole stood in the doorway, a box in his hands, the remains of his old project. Inside were charred circuit boards, twisted wires, and the remote that had changed everything. He wasn't here to hide it this time. He was here to let it go. Cole Harper entered quietly, his cane tapping lightly against the floor. He'd been limping a little more lately, though he never complained. When Ethan looked up, Cole just nodded as if to say, "It's time." Ethan walked to the center of the gym where a small plaque now hung on the wall. "From ashes we rise," dedicated to those who choose to rebuild. He set the box down beneath it, his reflection shimmering faintly on the polished floor. "You know," he said softly, "I thought the hardest part was forgiving them. But it wasn't." Cole tilted his head. "What was?" "Forgiving myself." Ethan exhaled, the weight finally leaving his voice. "Every night I'd replay it, wondering what would have happened if you hadn't stopped me. I don't think I'd still be here." Cole looked at him, steady and proud. "You're here because you made the choice to be. I didn't save you, Ethan. You did that yourself." Ethan blinked hard, a faint tremor in his jaw. "Then why does it still hurt?" "Because pain doesn't disappear," Cole said gently. "It just becomes a part of your story. And someday that story might save someone else." The words sank deep. Ethan glanced around the empty gym, the place that had broken him and rebuilt him all at once. "I think I'm ready to tell it," he murmured. Cole smiled, that familiar tired grin. "Then tell it loud. Tell it honestly. Someone out there needs to hear it." Ethan turned to him. "Do you really think people can change?" Cole's eyes softened. "I don't just think it. I've seen it. Right in front of me." A long silence followed, the kind that doesn't demand to be filled. Only when Ethan stepped forward and offered his hand did Cole realize the boy he once rescued wasn't a boy anymore. "Thank you," Ethan said quietly, "for not giving up on me when everyone else did." Cole clasped his hand firmly. "Don't thank me, kid. Just promise you'll do the same for someone else." Ethan nodded, tears glinting in his eyes. "I will." They turned toward the exit, the late afternoon light spilling through the gym windows like gold. Each step echoed, softer now, no longer haunted, no longer heavy. Outside, the air smelled of rain and renewal. Students passed by, laughing, unaware of the ghosts that had been buried in that building. Ethan paused at the door, taking one last look inside. He whispered, "Goodbye." And for the first time, it didn't hurt. Cole followed his gaze. "You know," he said quietly, "Jack would have liked you." Ethan smiled. "Then maybe that's the best goodbye I could ask for." Cole placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, kid. It's not a goodbye. It's a beginning." As they walked toward the parking lot, the wind carried the scent of spring. The world wasn't perfect, but it was waiting for someone to do better, to be better. Ethan looked up at the sky, feeling lighter than he had in years. "I think I finally get it," he said. Cole smiled. "Yeah, what's that?" "That sometimes the only way to honor the past is to stop living in it." Cole chuckled. "Sounds like you're ready to teach your own lessons now." Maybe he was. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person who refuses to give up on you, to remind you that your story isn't over yet. Leave a comment. Who was your Cole Harper, the person who saw light in your darkness? Your story might be the reason someone else decides to keep going today.